Okay, I'm opening the cafe doors. This is Steve Hargadon. It's the 17th of October. We're deep in connected fatigue syndrome, we decided last night. We don't think we're the only ones. The crowds have been getting a little bit smaller, and we think that people just have had so much to do. But I will tell you, these have been the best part of Connected Educator Month for me, and I'm really glad, Joyce and Gwyneth, that you are here. And thank you for coming.
Pleasure, Steve. Thank you for inviting us.
Yes,
it was an honor, Steve.
I love the timing of this, that it's right before the Library 2.0 1.3 conference. So we did our Connected Librarian Day on Monday. You guys are sort of the advanced show for Library 2.0 1.3, and then tomorrow morning we kick off. So, but this is much less formal, and it's much more fun, and I can't wait to go through the process with you. So, let's find out, I'm actually a slide ahead here. There are a number of really fun things happening through Connected Educator Month. If you haven't played with that connector, please do. There are the book clubs. There are all kinds of badges. You even can get a badge for being here tonight when we get to the very end. They have me show a slide with a code. And then there have been these cafe conversations, which really have been delightful. So those of you who are with us tonight, why don't you look to the left of the map. You're looking for the star icon. You're going to click on it twice and then click on the map. And you can let us know where you're participating from. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina this year. And it's been rainy. I love to see Brazil on the map. When I was in high school, I lived in Brazil for a year as an exchange student. And I've been thinking, almost every day I've thought this week that I want to go back. My daughter's sitting next to me. She's like, I'll go back with you. Denmark, how fun. Yes, my now quite old Portuguese that I still like to bring out every once in a while. We'll keep putting notes in the chat there. So here's how we've started. Each night we've had our guest give a short biographical sketch. So kind of the 5-minute overview of how you got to where you are. We're going to dive deeply into some passions and interests later, but this is just sort of so people have a sense of who you are. And Joyce, can we start with you?
Sure. I have been a librarian for 37 years. And I started in public libraries, and actually I started in special libraries in New York City at the Newspaper Advertising Bureau and at Brooklyn Public Library. And I have been fascinated by the way libraries open lives. In fact, I think I share the story of a library intern who basically turned my life around. I was shelving books as a page at Brooklyn Public Library. He noticed that I was reading things that not every young adult was reading. He gave me Kobo Abe's Woman in the Dunes and thought that I could handle challenging existential literature. And then he decided that he was going to talk about whatever I read with me whenever I was in, and we read together. And oh my God, it just took me out of the neighborhood and changed me. And so I wanted to do the same thing for the young people that I connected with as an adult. So I became a public librarian and then eventually a school librarian. And I have loved nearly every minute of my career and the influence that I've been able to have on the lives of young people. And in January, I'm going to really have a really hard time leaving the K-12 environment. I'm going to Rutgers to work with Ross Todd and the faculty there and preparing other professionals to work with the young people that I'll be leaving. So I'm very excited. It's been a tough year for librarians, but I remain optimistic about who we are and the change that we make in the world.
Joyce, why has it been a tough year for librarians?
I wish I could explain it. I think that this is the most important time in the world to be a guide through the information jungle, to get excited about the new tools for information and communication. I think that there is so much excitement in my library in suburban Philadelphia that it is buzzing, and I don't think, who can know, but I don't think that my administration would ever think of not having libraries in our district. And yet, a mile away from where I work in Philadelphia, where there is 240-something schools, there are 15 or 16 librarians still standing. Recently, some wealthy folk decided to support the 2 librarians in the magnet high schools so they could come back to their jobs and stop being first grade relief teachers. But I don't get it. I mean, this is the most important time to have librarians around, and we are possibly an obvious splash mark for many large districts. And so I don't think that people see what happens on the ground. So in Chicago and now in New York City and in Philadelphia and certainly in Los Angeles, it breaks my heart. I see people, Marie Slim posted on my blog this evening. She is one of the most exciting and most powerful and a great leader in our field. And she's been taken out of the library. She's teaching Spanish. She's probably a fabulous Spanish teacher, but her passion is working with kids on information skills, and she can no longer do this in Los Angeles. And so can you think of a time where we needed information skills more than we do today? My colleagues and I are so prepared to jump in and work with kids and make them excited, not only about information skills, but about the fabulous literature that we see. And yet I'm afraid that we're an endangered species. I know we're an endangered species, and I feel so bad that I haven't made the case strongly enough.
Okay, at some point I want to connect with you about Philadelphia, because I don't know why I don't think of you as being in Philadelphia currently, but my grandmother was Anna Lancaster Mendenhall, and I have these deep Philly roots. I mean, so interesting. I love going there. But let's talk about Brooklyn instead. Did you grow up in Brooklyn?
Yes, I did. I grew up in New York. Yeah. So
one of my favorite stories, which is sort of apocryphal, right? It's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Right. So about an Irish family, but written by, I think, a girl from a Polish family, actually, but she writes about the Irish family. But one of my favorite moments in that book is when the janitor is in taking classes in the classroom. And you and I share a love. You are much more, you have much more information and a better list than I do, but you and I share a love of teen fiction and literature, and you're always giving me book recommendations. But that book has been a touchstone for me. When did it come out, and how aware were you of it, and what was your reaction to it?
I clutched that to my chest at my bat mitzvah. I didn't want to leave the book because I was in the middle of it. I was reading it when I was 13, and I was frantic. I wanted to read every book in my public library like she did. I certainly didn't have a father or a family situation that was as troubled as hers, but I felt like an outsider, and I felt that books were my community, and books were something that could lift me in a way that Francie felt they could. And I had younger brothers like she did. I had nutty aunts like she did. It was lovely, and I think the book speaks to every ethnic group, and and especially young women who are looking for a way to move beyond what barriers that might be there for them. And Francie is such a fabulous character for young women to emulate. So oh my gosh, I'm so happy you mentioned that book. It's really just a favorite of mine.
I only read it about a year ago for the first time. Okay, Gwyneth, we get to do you now. So the same kind of a drill. Just sort of, there was a lot I learned about Joyce that I didn't know in that, and I'm hoping the same will be true for you.
I don't know if I knew all that either, so that was fascinating for me as well. Welcome, everybody. I started on a circuitous route to education. I was an English major in college, and my mother is still a teacher, although she's retired. So the last thing I was ever going to do was to go into education. Of course not. So I graduated from college with a double major of communications and English lit, and I started a job in advertising and public relations, and I worked for Sinai Hospital of Baltimore and special events, and did some graphic design, some advertising for Baltimore Magazine and Columbia Magazine, and I just kept getting laid off. And it was the late 80s, early 90s, and I just was sort of like, you know, this is really stinky. I get these great jobs and they're really exciting, but I keep getting laid off. Plus, I have to admit, they didn't really fulfill my soul. I knew I couldn't do it for 30 years. It was fun and all, but it really wasn't exciting enough to sustain my attention for that amount of time. So after the third or fourth time I'd been laid off since college, I went back to school full-time, and I was a graduate assistant, and this new program that they had started called Instructional Technology. And I was a media helper or a library helper all throughout high school and middle school, and we called it junior high, and a great love of reading, of course. And I got my master's in instructional technology and started being a media specialist. I did elementary for 5 years and then realized my sense of humor and snarkiness made kids cry, and I was better suited for middle school, where my immaturity and sophomoric humor could be appreciated and condoned, and I've been doing that for 17 years, and I love it. I can't honestly see me doing anything else right now, and I adore it, and every day is wonderful when I deal with kids and I teach kids, and the kids just keep me going, and I hope that my district supports us, and I try to do what I can so that my community, my parents, and my administration see that we can help our teachers with the challenges that our kids have before us. And I love my job.
So I went to this middle school conference for a couple of years to present, and there was something really different about the attendees at the middle school conference. Was I imagining that? I guess I compare with ISTE and other conferences, but they were really energetic and kind of bright and beaming. Is that usual?
Yeah, middle school teachers, honestly, we stick out like a sore thumb. Here's a little small anecdote to sort of explain that. For a long time, I was the president of our media association in my district, and we would have these meetings, and the elementary people would sit together, and the middle school people would sit together, and the high school people would sit together, and you could always tell, the middle school people, we would stand out because we would be raucous and giggly and stupid and wonderful and enthusiastic. And over the intercom, we were in a high school, they said, "Mr. Titsworth, you have a phone call on line 2, Mr. Titsworth." And of course, we all just started bellowing laughter. The elementary looked at us, people looked at us askance and slightly alarmed, and the high school people looked at us like the high school librarians looked at us, and they just rolled their eyes like, "Oh no, not them again. Oh, they're so tiresome." And it really, I think you are who you teach in some ways. Elementary people are so sweet and so nice and so, adorable, and high school people are so sophisticated and, and middle school people, I think we were just immature and awesome and
that is
crazy.
So funny. Do you have favorite books?
Yeah. I have a gajillion favorite books. I try not to push them too much. I from going back as little kids, Chronicles of Narnia was like the first series I read starting in second grade, where Miss Penny would read it to us every day, and then I wanted them my own, and I really wasn't quite ready to read them on my own, but Mom helped me. Little House on the Prairie, Lord of the Rings. I read Interview with a Vampire when I was in sixth grade. Probably too young to read it, but I just had to. My favorite book of all times is Time and Again by Jack Finney, an illustrated novel about time travel. That's not a young adult book, but a wonderful, wonderful imaginary book about New York City in the Victorian era. And of course, I'm a huge, unapologetic Harry Potter fan. I could go on. Don't stop me.
That's so fun. Little House on the Prairie, we have 4 children and 3 were daughters. And it felt like I read through that whole series out loud 3 times. I'm sure I did. Time and Again, I don't know, but I've made a note here.
Oh, you really? I gift it to a lot of people, and you might find it on your doorstep, Steve, for all that you've done for librarians. I swear, it is one of my favorite books to gift to people because it's just such an unexpected gem of a novel. And it uses actual photographs from the early, days of photography and all around the city of New York. And it's a reimagining of events that everybody knows very well, but in a time travel sense. And they use the photographs, the actual photographs from the time, to weave in the story. So it's beautiful. And a good read, a great read.
Oh, fun. Okay, so we're going to come back to this, but before we do so, this is sort of audience time. This is a chance to talk about something or to put it on the whiteboard or place it in the chat, something interesting that you learned today. It can be anything from superficial to serious. But did you learn something today? And to write on the whiteboard, you click on the letter A that's to the left of the whiteboard. It's the 4th icon down, or you can put it in the chat. And Joyce, while we're waiting for answers, what do you say when someone asks you your favorite books?
I really have trouble with that because I don't think they're asking me really what my favorite books are. I think they're asking me for what I recommend as a good read. And so what I'm trying to do is listen carefully and make some judgments and say, well, what was the last thing you read that you loved? And then I can move forward in terms of talking about things I read that I think they might love as well. And honestly, this what we call that sort of thing is reader's advisory, Steve. And I could list a whole bunch of books that I love, but I don't know that people want me to do that. I think what people really want me to do is list the stuff that I love that they think they will love as well. And so recently, what I've been, I've been discovering that I can point people. We were talking about personalized learning environments. And one of the things I'm working with young people and teachers on is making discoveries about social reading. And that's part, I think, of what personal learning environments are. And so I'm showing them apps, and we walk together in the stacks, and we look at keywords, and we look at genre, and we talk about the stuff we're discovering in apps like the Goodreads apps. I'm so excited about Biblionasium. Yalta has a teen bookfinder app, and I'm walking with iPads and cell phones and mobile phones into my stacks now and talking about reviews and then my own feelings about them. And we're playing with books in new ways in terms of how we're reviewing them and discussing them. I happen to love Tom Robbins, and my favorite book probably is Jitterbug Perfume, which nobody's read, but I'm in love with that book. Anyway, I think that's probably enough, right?
On my laptop, and it takes so long for my touchpad to scroll over and hit the talk button. Sorry about that. I think you turned me on to John Green. Does that sound right?
I hope I turned you on to John Green. Who wouldn't love John Green? You know, my students not only read John Green, they love John Green. They follow him on Twitter. They go to Crash Course when they want to learn. You know, and that's the whole thing about social reading. I think that John Green is not only an author, he's a real person, and he's a leader in teen culture. And Hank is wonderful too, Jackie. And if you visit Crash Course, you know, my kids, when they want to study, they will check Khan Academy, but they prefer to go to Crash Course. Yeah, try to be awesome. You know, so you know, there are all these wonderful communities that have been organized in some part by young adult authors who are using the influence they have on young adults in really powerful and positive ways. And I think what my teens are doing is they're seeing how powerful these people are through Twitter and discovering their own voice in Twitter as well. And yes, Gwyneth, Patrick Harmon too. And so there's this rich kind of literary environment or literary discussion environment on Twitter that some of my kids have discovered and some have completely ignored. Yes, we wanted to decrease subject. Anyway, one of the things I'm excited about is Andrew Slack is coming to Philadelphia for our midwinter conference, and he is kind of in charge of Dumbledore's army. And one interesting thing you don't know about me is that my daughter went to school with Andrew, and my son was best friends with his brother, because it's all a whole Philadelphia thing again. So yeah, so you know, I think this whole notion of social reading is huge, and that books are not necessarily contained by their covers anymore. That my kids have communicated with authors on Twitter and brought them into our book club. So we had Laurie Hulse Anderson come in at the end of the year last year, and we kind of owned her for 2 hours, and oh my God, it was fabulous. We helped her pick the cover for her new book. We had Libra Bray come in, and my kids jumped up and down. You know, Cory Doctorow visited with my book club. So these authors are becoming real people. They are open. They're listening to kids. They are using kids to make sure their books are authentic. And it's a two-way conversation. It's not like a one-way conversation like you might have thought about with your daughters and Laura Ingalls Wilder. I think that these authors are very involved with the lives of kids and youth culture.
Okay, so I'm making some huge connections here. I love social reading. I think you and I should run a conference on social reading. And I discovered that when I went to Powell's bookstore, I made the mecca, the trek to Powell's bookstore in Portland this year, first time ever, and I left after 20 minutes because I couldn't read anybody else's opinions of any of the books I was finding. So I went to the education section, I was looking for some books, and there were 3 or 4 books, say, on Montessori schools. But I had no way of seeing what other people had thought of them. There was nothing except the jacket cover. And I realized I'm so now interested in the other ways in which books get evaluated and thought about from the other voices. How darn fun. Okay, so let's see what people learned today. That the U.S. government needs to grow up, Dumbledore's army, social reading. I keep thinking there's going to be a good social reading app. I actually sit next to a guy who works at Amazon, who works, you know, in the Kindle group, and had a long conversation with him about why they're having trouble creating the ability to actually annotate books and share those annotations, and it has to do with copyright, which surprised me. But even the Amazon book reviews for me become a form of social reading. I don't know what Flipgrip is. Who put Flipgrip in there? Because we'll give you the microphone and have you tell us about it. If you have a microphone.
It was me.
There you go.
Okay,
oh,
so
who's that?
Joyce.
Oh, Joyce.
I'm sorry to be a mic hog. But I'm working on developing 2 new online courses for, well, one for Rutgers and one face-to-face. But I've been looking for ways to interact with my grad students. and I can see this being really powerful with my high school students too. I've been using VoiceThread as a way to pose a question and have students respond in video. This is even easier, and the videos are large, and it's free, and it's a great conversation. I'm kind of in love with it, and the way you can look at who's responded. I mean, I'm not really all that interested in detailed metrics, but I really can manage this really well. And I met the guys from the University of Minnesota, and they're really interested in hybrid learning environments. And I'm starting to get responses. The question I posed was, can you come up with a library elevator speech? And I have 4 so far. 2, of course, I have to admit, are the developers from Flipgrid who just happened to pop on. But they came up with really beautiful library elevator speeches, so I'm so grateful. But please try Flipgrid. It's free. And I think you can even have book discussions. I mean, it's just so open-ended. You can do almost anything and have conversations. Remember when we all discovered VoiceThread and how nuts we went over it? I think this is a game changer just like that. And I'll be quiet now.
How fun. Okay, so Gwyneth, I want you to pick one of these other learnings and ask someone about it. Was there another one here that you thought was worth drilling down on for you?
There's so many. I mean, I love hearing the excitement of what's going on. I want to hear more about Dumbledore's Army, of course. Eurasma in the iPad app I know is very strong and flexible. I've not really quite mastered getting it to work for me for some reason, but I'd love to hear somebody talk about it and convince me, give me an elevator speech to give it another try, because I'm one of those terribly impatient people that if I can't master something really quick, I lose interest. So except for Second Life, which I was sort of dogged about. But somebody, I'd love to hear more about Eurasma or Orasma. Maybe I'm not even saying it right. So somebody please give me the speech about that. Was that Anjanine? I don't know. I'll pass the mic over.
Hi, I'm Sydney, and I was the person that put Orasma on there, but since I only learned just about it, I was able to make one, I think it's Orasma because they call them auras today, and the only thing I can really tell you about it is that it's just like having a QR code with a trigger and a video, but instead of a QR code, the trigger is a picture. So if you think about taking a picture of a student and then having the video be the student talking in a foreign language, or taking a picture of a piece of artwork in an art show, and then what happens to your iPad is the student talking about why they selected the art, or why they drew the art, or what the theme was, or the background if it was a real artist. I think that would be a good use for it.
So, Gwyneth, did that give you what you needed?
Yeah, it did. I mean, I tried it, and I've seen, I've watched the video and everything, and I love how, it can be interactive. Maybe it was because I was trying it at a conference, and the notoriously poor connectivity kept any of our auras from working. We had a digital sandbox there, and we were trying to put them everywhere last spring, and none of them worked, and people were getting mad. So.
Okay, so we're about to move on. Was there anything that either of you wanted to call attention to here? There was student in New York City, Hackosaurus goggles. The teachers, grad students have not learned personal agency. Oh my gosh, I want to hear about that. Who wrote that? Anyway, if you were the person who wrote about the personal agency, oh Jackie, of course. Okay, social reading. 99 and 5 is not ambitious enough. I don't know what 99 and 5 is. Did I miss some big news? Okay, well, we'll move on here. Joyce, is the 99 and 5 you as well? Okay, so at this point in the cafe, normally Tom DeBoer comes on and tells us a little bit about what's coming up tomorrow. I don't see Tom in the room, and so if anybody has anything they're planning on attending tomorrow, would you mind putting it in the chat, and then others will know that there's something interesting happening tomorrow. So if there's something that you're planning on attending tomorrow, do put it in the chat and let us know. I will be at the Library 2.013 conference. In fact, I will be there for the next 2 days with very little sleep, but I love it. Okay. It is online. It's exactly like this. Well, it's not exactly like this. It's a little more formal, but it is in the same environment. Yeah, I have a love affair with the library profession. It's a funny thing. Some of you know the story, but Library 2.0 was actually started by Bill Drew. And Bill, I think Bill's Library 2.0 was really the model for my Classroom 2.0. And at some point, Bill said he was going to turn Library 2.0 off, and I emailed him and said, please don't. I would be glad to keep it going. And that was the start of a love affair. Okay, so we're going to do now a sort of a deeper dive, and this is a chance for Joyce and Gwyneth to kind of tell us about some idea they're playing with or something they're really passionate about. If we were actually sitting down in a coffee shop or a cafe and we're having that heart-to-heart conversation, what would it be about? And so since Joyce had some significant mic time there at the end, Gwyneth, let's start with you. And why don't you tell us what you're really thinking about?
Well, that's so funny. I never mind listening to Joyce talk because she's always so wonderfully forward-thinking, and I always learn from her. And that's what I'm going to lead into what I'm passionate about, was just something that she was like one of the first people to mention it. And if I honestly tried everything that Joyce mentioned, I would probably not get any sleep. And I don't know how she does so much, because when does she sleep? I don't know. I know I sleep. I go to bed at 9:30. I'm really boring. But she, with curation tools, she inspired me years ago, and I didn't try all of them. And I'm sometimes a little slow to try some of them. And then I think it was a year after I heard about Scoop It that she told me how awesome it was, that I really started falling in love with it. So that's my latest new passion. I really have to say, if people are trying to get into Twitter, get into digital publishing, get into curation, it's a one-stop shop to me, because with Scoop It, the wonderful things is that it's glossy, it's beautiful, it's digital. You can totally make it your own with your own backgrounds, your own gorgeous pictures, and you can not only share those digital breadcrumbs of great articles and resources that you want to maybe go back to find later with a real handy little bookmarklet on your toolbar, but you can tweet it out at the same time. So for those of us who like, oh, I want to tweet about that, well, it will do it for you. Now, I have, of course, broken up with Facebook years ago. We had a fight, and I didn't like he's just being too slutty with my personal information. And so we, I have a, blog. You can read about the drama of that relationship. It was called Dear Facebook, We Need to Talk. But if you're a Facebook nut, I don't judge, of course. Everybody likes their own thing. But you can also share on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn on the same Scoop with Scoop It. And I really love how they listen to educators, and they're trying to make it better. And they just added an educational technology interest group within Scoop It so that you can share with other people your wonderful discovery. So on Sunday mornings is when I usually do a lot of my scooping. I go see what the people who I'm following, and of course Joyce is one of the best ones to follow because she always has such wonderful things to see and to share. And I re-scoop things that she scooped, and other people are fabulous there too. And it's just a wonderful tool for curating, sharing, keeping, and organizing. And it's what I'm a little bit passionate about these days. And I could go on, and don't make me. But if you're going to AASL, I guarantee you we'll be talking about it there at our workshop.
Okay, so I love curation, but I'm not sure I use the word in the same way that others do because I haven't had this conversation. Who's talking about curation? In our library, school, ed tech world, who are the voices talking about curation? Are you one of the voices? Is Joyce one of the voices?
Definitely Joyce is one of the voices. I'm a smaller voice, I would imagine. But yeah, I think it's a wonderful topic for all of us to be starting, because it's not about now finding the resources. It's about curating and choosing and refining and organizing the resources. So back in the day, I used to be just dandy, proud of myself for creating an Angel Fire web page with links to resources for weather or for, you know, what have you. And I still have those web pages up if you want to go laugh at them. But, you know, this nowadays, it's so much more than just handing kids over to a great link. It's to put them in context, or to set them up, or to explain them, or to put them in a certain particular order, like Mentor Mob, making those playlists. Another great curation tool that Joyce showed the world, or to me, and the world, that I love now as well, where you can create a step-by-step playlist of resources and weave in video, add in a bit of text, like a mini blog post in between. You can even have in Mentor Mob a quiz in the middle of it, seeing if the students are actually reading and getting the information that you're presenting in the playlist. And that's another wonderfully exciting tool.
Okay.
And I'll let Joyce take it from there because she's really the expert.
We'll come back to Joyce, I promise. So I'm an Evernote user, and there's something about having the content on my computer's hard drive, having it highly indexed, where I'm gathering dozens of things every day that relate to things I'm interested in, and it feels to me like it's part of building this depth of knowledge in certain areas that I think become part of my value to the community. But it doesn't share. So what do you say to someone like me who resists Scoop It or some of these other services because I feel like I don't really have control long term of it?
I don't know that I don't know how I would answer that honestly, because everybody has their little tool, their tool that they feel like warm to and fuzzy to, and I never. It's sort of like the whole dim sum idea or tapas. You take a little plate, you taste it, you like it, you keep it, or you push it to the side and grab another plate. So I never warmed up to Evernote myself, and I have wonderful friends who love it and use it, and yet I'm a Dropbox girl. And for me, I use Dropbox, and I know that they're very different. Evernote's got other techniques and wonderful features. But, I think you just sort of have to find a tool that you love, although then I think sometimes maybe I'm missing out, but you just can't try everything, and I'm probably, people are like, oh no. For me, I'm just sort of scattered and a little ADD about some things, so when I do find something, I chomp on and love, but I do love about the ability with some of these curation tools to not only organize and keep them, but the collaboration and the sharing part is wonderful. Mentor Mob, you can have a public Mentor Mob playlist that it's a group created, a crowdsourced playlist that anybody can add to it. You can set those permissions, and that's really powerful.
What an interesting topic. There are certain things that I feel like I want to keep long term and don't want to lose control of, but I do miss the sharing piece. Okay, so We can come back, Gwyneth, if something occurs to you, but let's move to Joyce now. So Joyce, you're certainly welcome to riff off the curation theme, but you can really talk about anything, something that you're thinking about currently, something that's near and dear to you.
Okay, well, I think that I want to make sure that you feel like you have permission not to share. I think that people curate for a variety of different purposes, and I think personal knowledge management is valid and legitimate. And if you just want to curate for yourself so that you know where stuff is, Steve, go right ahead and do that. I think that sometimes in my life I curate as a librarian, and sometimes I curate for me. And I feel a little bit guilty when people come across the stuff I curate for myself because I don't comment on it. I'm just kind of holding it because I need to use it for blog posts or other projects. But I think we need to give ourselves permission that not everything we put out there is meant for the universe. And so, and then the other thing is that there are just so many different tools, and I think that we use different tools for different purposes. For instance, MentorMob is where I collaborate with other people and often do it on my own to create reading lists. And I do that for my grad courses, but I also show kids how to use that. I know Robin Good has come up with taxonomies of these curation tools. I'd like to kind of create my own taxonomy. For instance, MentorMob is where my Gay Straight Alliance comes up. You know, we have meetings and they want to talk about how gay people have been presented in situation comedies. And so they'll use MentorMob to create a viewing list of anywhere from Soap to kind of starting from there to Ellen to a variety of other situation comedies, and then we sequence them, we comment on them, and that's a very cool use of it. But similarly, when I want to have my grad course go into EBSCO and Elsevier and also get my own comments and my own PowerPoints, I use MentorMob for that purpose. The thing I'm most excited about right now is my own discovery of discovery services, and that's something that's kind of unique to the library world. And I think what's been really frustrating for all of us for a very long time is that we have so many different silos or entry points to our collections, and we might have pathfinders and curation tools and ebooks and databases and our OPACs, which are our catalogs. And this is not a perfect thing, but this year I introduced a discovery service. It just happened to have the EBSCO brand on it. But now what my kids can do is go into the discovery service, and if they know how to use filters well, and that's something I'm really enjoying teaching, then they can search across the various brands in my collection, and that's something the universities are starting to do too. Everybody really wants a one-line search tool to find what they want. And in libraries, we've been giving them 20 different lines to search and jumping. So we've been teaching, oh, if you want this, you go to ProQuest. If you want this, you go to EBSCO. If you want this, you go to Gale. But what this does is it creates a Google-like search across the library's holdings. And these holdings, what I love about these could be free things as well as things that people pay for. And so a discovery service creates a result list that's organized and in a specific way, and the searcher determines how good the search is by how well they construct a search and how well they use filters, but it searches across the entire collection, which is very exciting to me. I know this sounds incredibly geeky and so librarian-y, so I'm sorry for doing that, but I kind of am in love with that. And it is a curation tool, so I think I'm probably losing the audience. Let me know, Steve.
Okay, so Joyce, I mean, you're like my better twin sister, right? So you're the, you always say things that are so interesting to me. I've been trying for months now to run a conference called Search Matters. I own the domain name Search Matters, and I'm like, I went to Google and I visited with Dan there, and of course he said no, but then they immediately ran their own conference, and I was like so discouraged. It's like, no, I really want to do this. I want to be, I think this is, Search matters so much. So I'm just going to put that on the list for you and me to talk about, because obviously you're the one to drive that. Search camp. Oh, how fun. Okay, so I don't know that I feel qualified to respond to what you just said, but is there somebody in the audience that wants to ask Joyce a question about that? Maybe somebody who's more familiar with those technologies and what she's expressing. Search camp. What a blast. I'm interested in all of the sort of skill sets that aren't what we consider kind of primary, but end up being really, really critical to becoming an engaged learner. And search would be high on that list for me as one that if you went to most schools or talked to most people, they would not say this is something critical. But it feels to me that every day when I'm searching, the techniques that I've developed for finding material are 80% of the value of my day, getting that value back. I'm also sort of interested in other sort of less tangible things as well, like the curiosity and the willingness and interest in kind of going further. Are there other things that occur to either of you that are not talked about as much in terms of success that actually become kind of key factors?
Joyce, I think that so many times I worry about our test-driven environment, and I worry about personalized learning. I worry about students' choice and student agency. And, you know, I feel like so many of these wonderful things that I see popping up are almost friction for the environment that I see coming up in my schools, in what I see on the ground. And the teachers are terribly fearful right now because in many schools we're rolling out Common Core assessments at the same time we're rolling out teacher effectiveness assessments. And so how do we continue the good work that we're doing in terms of what's possible in learning in maker spaces, in inquiry and problem-based learning and project-based learning at the same time that we're worried about having kids all do well on these new assessments. And you know, one of the scary things that I've seen from my own students in the last year is that here we are, you know, and I realize that I'm in kind of a special space. Maybe I'm the only one here in the special space, but I work in the suburbs, and I work with kids who are generally doing well. They score well on their bubble tests, and yet we are so afraid that they're not going to do well on these Common Core assessments and the new PARCC tests that we make them write 5-paragraph essays over and over again, and that we make them do close reading in sculpture class and health class. And they ought to be able to test out of that and move on and create something wonderful. And it drives me crazy. And so this year, my kid said, Dr. V, can we have a poetry slam? And I said, sure. And can you promise me there'll be poetry? And they said, yeah, don't worry, we'll have poetry. And they never showed me any poetry. But the evening of both events, like the kids came with poems in their pockets. They came with, you know, I wound up staying till 10 in the evening because they had 40 poems, and then they started doing a South by Southwest event where they actually started sketchnoting the poems. But it was interesting, the last one in the spring, 3 out of, say, the 30 poems were about assessments. And the poems addressed how tired they were of doing the work that we were asking them to do over and over again when what they really wanted to do was write poetry and create. It broke my heart, and I think that we're remediating everybody, and not everybody needs to be remediated. And what I can do in the library is, you know, to some degree I have more freedom than a classroom teacher. I can foster these personal interests. I can encourage kids to create, and many of the classroom teachers are so exhausted and they just don't have enough time to do this stuff. But it's truly sad that I feel like we're taking the spontaneity, the creativity out of classrooms to a great degree. I applaud anybody who is doing wonderful things with Common Core assessments and is finding a way to make the kind of teaching and learning that's happening and that's inspired by that creative. But what I'm seeing on the part of my kids are stomach aches, nervousness, a real sickness of being over-tested, and they're seeing the difference in their school culture from 2 years ago to today, and it makes me very sad.
Isn't that interesting? I did run a homeschool conference this year, and I've been kind of surprised at the number of people I meet who are teachers who've taken their kids out of school to homeschool them. And that to me is kind of a sign that they're recognizing that for their own children, they're not happy with the particular circumstance their child would be in. And I'm interested, and I'm at Black Mountain this year, which is a group of students who are sort of self-directed higher ed. And it is intriguing to me, Joyce, that in that environment of self-direction, how unprepared they seem to me to be to actually kind of dive in and ask questions and be curious and manifest those characteristics that would really bring them to learning new things. And that may not be entirely fair, but it's been on my mind. Does anybody want to take the mic and ask either Joyce or Gwyneth a question? We have about 7 minutes to go. We're going to do one more quick game. Anne of Green Gables. I don't know how that came up, but boy, that's been a favorite in our family as well. Go ahead, Gwyneth.
Thank you. I've been a fan of universal design and learning for a while, and I'm actually taking a class right now for a certification because I'm up for certification again, my last class though. And I really like UDL because I can use UDL to justify having that wonderful choice of products that the kids make for any kind of inquiry. So as demonstration mastery or, of any kind of given piece of research, giving the teachers the encouragement to go beyond the book report, because I worry about with these trends of the writing and, that we're going to go back to the book report. And I've been trying to squash it as much as I can, go beyond the trifold, and give kids a variety of tech and non-tech or low-tech options, because I live in a district that does have have-nots, and the digital divide is pretty great in my school. So UDL is amazing and a wonderful way of looking at things and putting creativity back into, I think, practice with the kids. So creating products that really rejoice in that kind of creativity.
Okay, I'm glad to extend the conversation on UDL. If you would like to, please feel free to raise your hand or take the mic or put something in the chat. But what I want to do is to move to kind of our final activity here. And I'm thinking that Peggy had asked a question about Pathfinders, and maybe we'll let that be answered in the chat for the moment. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. In the chat, go ahead and put your Twitter handle or your blog address, and then something that you're thinking about right now, deep thoughts that you're having, or a passionate interest, something you care about. And we're going to let Joyce and Gwyneth each choose one of you to ask a question about your interests or passions. So I'll give an example here. So I'm going to put in at Steve Hargadon, which is my Twitter handle. And I'm going to put, I am super interested in social reading. And I'm interested in specifically in apps that seem to be capable of allowing us to share comments on books as we're reading. Online informal PB. Yes, of course, Peggy. We've obviously got some patterns tonight. "23 things type of learning programs," working on one as you're listening. I've never done a 23 things program. Patha, would you like to take the mic and tell us how that works for you? Polly, I guess. I love that connection, Jackie, with the teachers developing a growth mindset. Okay, Joyce or Gwyneth, is there one there that you would like to drill down on?
I just want to say agency is a real issue. I'm noticing this with the young teachers that are coming into our school, and I'm noticing it with my own students. I'm nearing 60. And I grew up in a period of time where if we didn't like something, we'd speak up about it and fix it. We figured out ways to do it, and right now we have more ways to fix something than ever before, and yet young teachers are not speaking up about the things that are not working for them in their classrooms. And my students are defeated before they even express an issue, and I don't want to be a teacher who allows that. And so I'm encouraging them to speak up, and I honestly don't understand why we can't take the power and fix things. So I see that that's not necessarily the trend in the chat right now, but I do think Jackie mentioned it, and it's worrying me that that professionals are behaving like sheep right now, and I don't know how to address this. Jackie, yeah, we need to model democracy. If our kids leave with nothing else, they need to know that they have a voice. And so I think that's about all I'll say right now on that.
The people who've come regularly to the cafe are tired of hearing me talk about this, Joyce, but I've actually been doing a lot of history reading back from the 1890s, the 1960s, early 70s, and now, and seeing a pattern when there's a significant potential for democratic voice, how it gets shut down. And that you and I can have that longer conversation some evening. Okay, a minute to go. Gwyneth, did you want to ask anybody anything?
Well, I guess I want to talk more about that agency bit, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. And it is defeating. I love my district. I would never speak against them in any way, shape, or form. But we're a conservative district, and I have, I'm the daring librarian, but I'm not the stupid librarian. And I know to stir the pot, and I'm not afraid to stir the pot, but I can't break the pot. And I've seen examples in our state of where people have, argued against some of the things and have felt real backlash about it. So it does worry me that young teachers are seeing that, it's a little dangerous to be too outspoken about things that they're not pleased with. And I don't want to end on a sad or dire note, but that is concerning to me. And yet I don't know that I really want to go too crazy with it myself because I want to keep my job.
I'm interested in how the tools and the technology seem to naturally lead to a certain level of independence. And if it's not leading to it in other areas, why that would be. But we'll save it for another night. That wasn't a down note for me at all. This was really delightful to get to know both of you at this level. Thanks so much for coming to the cafe. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. Tom came late, and or maybe you were here, Tom, and did I miss you? Do you need to give a quick report?
Sure. I'll take just a couple minutes to say a couple things about what's going on. I mean, I think obviously tomorrow there's just top of mind. The Tech Forum is going on in New York, and what's interesting about it this year is, it's an in-person event, but there are going to be 3 sessions that are accessible to CEM participants that normally you would have to pay for. So I thought that was kind of interesting. One of them is about the maker movement. One is about personalized professional development. The third one's escaping me at the moment. But so that's interesting. And we're hoping to launch a menu that collects together all the contests, challenges, and collaborative projects that people have put forward during CEM, which sometimes don't get the attention that they should in our newsletters, because we're always sort of focused on, what's coming up at 9 o'clock. So we're going to be pulling that together, and it's really pretty remarkable, all the things that people are doing. Obviously, the big news of the weekend is Library 2.0. I don't need to tell anybody in this room that, probably. And Discovery's VertCon, which is also another great event, happening on the 19th, it's an interesting event because it takes place at a number of face-to-face locations around the country and even at this point the world. People all watching and experiencing a set of presentations together and discussing them. And Discovery is actually giving free lunches to everybody who attends at the face-to-face meeting. So that's another great thing. And then, of course, natural for right after Library 2.0, which is going to be huge, is National Writing Day coming up, or National Day on Writing coming up on Monday with a nationwide, if not worldwide, tweet up. So there's lots of big doings coming up ahead.
Oh, Tom, thank you. Awesome. Yeah, I'm getting myself ready for Library 2.013. I'm going to try and get a good night's sleep tonight. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Joyce. Thanks, Gwyneth. So much fun. Really love spending
Thanks, everybody.
time with you. Have a great night or day. See you tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow's Audrey Waters. Take care. Bye.